right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing today?
Great.
All right. Are we? We doing good back there? We got a couple gifts to start off, right? We got some wonderful education starting off. So I'm excited because you're already hitting on topics that we're just going to build upon. You know, you may have not thought that, it fit, but it does, because we're going to touch a little bit on childhood, and then also diversity in employment and leadership as well. It's all important as we grow in this world. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is LeBlanc-White. I am retiring from the military. I served in the special operations community for over 15 years, and I was the first executive coach in the entire, enlisted coach in the entire Department of Defense. And so with that, I learned a few things, because in the military, what you have is 2% of the nation serves in the military, 1% serves in the special operations community, and then 1% of that serves at the highest enlisted rank, which is an E9. So I've done those things, and so part of what we're going to talk about are those lessons that we've learned over time of being in that 1%. And we're also going to talk about how to redefine leadership utilizing epigenetics, emotional intelligence, and healing. One thing that I found along the way is that we're so focused on what has to happen that we forget about the human element of us as well. And so we were fortunate to present a leadership lecture at the University of Hawaii back in April with the leadership cohort there. And we just want to talk to you a little bit more about that today. And so I want to introduce my lovely partner in everything and wife.
I'm Dr. Laurine LeBlanc-White. I'm a mental health professional. I've been a mental health professional for over 15 years. I'm an author, teacher. So yes, and I absolutely love this topic.
So one thing I'm going to ask you to do is, let me ask a question. Who's played basketball before, or who's played soccer? Like soccer, okay? Basketball, anybody? No? Volleyball, any sports, all the sports. So what I will say is as a child, right? One thing that, we were notorious for was we would leave our basketballs, soccer balls, volleyballs outdoors. We'll go indoors and hang out for the day, and we'll just leave it outdoors. And seasons are going by. And so what happens with a ball when it's left outside, can anyone guess? It starts to become a little weathered, because you got different seasons that are happening. You got cold, you got heat, you got rain, snow, all of those things. And so just like, asphalt adjusts, just like buildings adjust, that ball adjusts as well. And so when it comes to the idea of resilience, the basic foundational definition of resilience is to what? To bounce back, right? It's to bounce back from something that you came from. The challenge with that is that when you bounce back from something, there's already a change that has already happened. And so you don't bounce back the exact same. And so resilience has to be founded on the foundation with healing. And a lot of us skip over the healing aspect and say, hey, I'm just going to get back to it. I'm going to get back into the work. I'm going to get back into the teaching that I was doing. I'm going to get back into that professional career I was in from the trauma that was introduced into our lives. Over 70% of the people in the U.S. have experienced trauma. Did anybody know that? Here's another fact. And I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hands. But of that 70%, 1 in 5 have experienced more than one traumatic event, up to 5 traumatic events. And you're talking about from childhood to your adulthood. And a lot of times we don't get the care that we need in our childhood, and sometimes we carry that with us. And so when you talk about leadership is understanding the human element, because when you're leading an organization, when you're leading people, when you're leading students, it's not just about learning the information, it's about transforming their lives at the very core. And something else that we found along the way is that not only are we impacted by those traumatic events, but we're also impacted by events that we hadn't experienced ourselves that are traumatic.
Which is called epigenetics. Has anyone ever heard of epigenetics here? Well, I'm glad to talk about it. I love this topic. So epigenetics is a study of changes of organizations by gene modification. So they've done a study in 2013. They did a study with rat pups. And they found that they put them in these little, and they do rat pups because that's closest to our DNA. So they put a study with rat pups and they tried to get them to get the cheese, but as they got the cheese, they were getting electrocuted. So they found that when the rat pups had babies, without even getting electrocuted, they avoided the traps. So that tells us that when our first generation experiences trauma, we feel the trauma as well without experiencing their trauma, and that's epigenetics. So that means that our genes get modified or altered without altering our DNA. So I just found that so fascinating. They also did study on Holocaust members, people that experienced slavery. They did longitudinal studies that found that people had the same stimuli responses from their parental experiences that they experienced. So I just thought that was just fascinating. So we might be carrying things from our generation of our grandparents, what they experienced, and responding and not even realizing why we're responding the way we're responding. So it's good to ask questions. Like, what did you experience, grandma or grandpa? Because that can impact our leadership, it can impact how we show up, it can impact how we interact.
And to build upon that, like through experience in the military. So I went into the military, I was really young when I went in there. I'm still young now, I'll say that. Look at the gray hairs that are happening up here. I try to keep a low haircut so you don't see them. But I joined really young, and I experienced combat just right away. 19-year-old kid, deployed a few times, ended up with 8 deployments overall in combat areas. And I experienced a lot of different things that were traumatic at the time. But what I didn't realize is that I was also carrying traumatic things from my childhood. And so as I was stuck as a leader, as I was stuck in my progression moving forward, I couldn't understand what was holding me back. And so I finally sat down in a chair and I said, okay, here's a professional. You got to help me out. What's going on with me? Because I don't understand this. I'm dealing with the stuff that I already went through, but there's something else there. And it turns out that's exactly what it is. Sometimes what happens is we are impacted by something that didn't happen to us, but happened to our parents when we're in their bellies. And so I was hyper vigilant. So you know that as one of the common things that's associated with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But I wasn't just experiencing that from my military experience, but I experienced that from earlier events that happened before I was here walking. And so once I was able to do the work to walk through that, then I became unlocked. I was able to progress a lot better in a healthier way than I was before. And then I started teaching people things like, hey, it's not just about what you go through on a day-to-day basis, but you also have to understand things like grief recovery. It's not something we visit very often. And so when you look at large organizations like the military or institutions, we have mental health providers, behavioral health providers, we have coaches that are helping assist along the way. But the one thing that we don't do a great job at institutionally or organizationally is dealing with those unkept things that were deep down, in the pocket.
And creating a safe space for people to talk about their trauma, right? It's all about what you can provide for the organization, not how you can help the individual. And we understand that it's a capitalistic system, but at the same time, how can you operate at your full capacity if you're not there mentally or emotionally?
And then who makes up the organization? Can anybody tell me that? It's us, right? It's us. It's the human aspect of it. So like you have this big machine of University of Hawaii, for instance, or another institution somewhere else. Like it's us. We are the organization. And so what we found is like when you take care of the people, when you make sure they have exactly what it is that they need, they're going to take care of the organization because that's us. And so we can find a way to succeed together in a healthy way. But first, you have to understand that when you're grieving something, it's not just the loss of a person. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a career. It could be the loss of a pet. It could be the loss of technology. It could be the loss of almost anything. But how do you work through that grief cycle in order to get yourself to a balanced point where you can pivot off of and move into your next stage of professional growth? And so that's one thing we talked about. And then we want to kind of tie it together at the very end because we also have to talk about some leadership principles along the way, because there's a way in order to achieve this. And excuse me because we moved a little quick because we got
15.
probably 3 minutes now. I'm
Okay,
guessing
okay.
2.5.
All right.
But there's 3 things that I want to tie to this, and then we're going to talk about the leadership principles. The first is that you need a professional body of individuals to help you out, and that could be mental health professionals, it could be behavioral health, psychologists, psychiatrists, professional coaches that can help you out. But then on top of that, you have to understand emotional intelligence and the pillars of emotional intelligence so you can move forward through that. So that is like self-awareness. How does something land on me when it's said in the room? And then self-management. How do I manage myself when that lands on me? And then things like social awareness. What is happening in the world? So when I'm sitting in a room, I know how to navigate certain social situations so I don't say the wrong thing that's offensive and offend the other person. So think about things like that. And then the final pillar is relationship management. How do I manage the relationships that I'm gifted to come across? And then tying in the last point, which is the pillars, the first aspect is people, and we just talked about people, right? You have to
invest in your people.
Yes.
And your people will invest in you. I feel like a lot of companies have lost that, but when you invest in your people and they see that you care, they're going to want to show up to work. They're going to want to do their best. A lot of times people feel like they don't care. I'm just a paycheck. I'm just a person that just provides the job, and you want to just show that people aspect, that human aspect. You care about how they're feeling. You care how they're doing, and that's missing sometimes. Some organizations, well, most.
and then there's EQ, emotional intelligence, and IQ. So intelligence, very important, but emotional intelligence tells you like how to maneuver and manage the intelligence that you do have for the environment that you and for the organization that you're serving. And then there's fast and flat communication. Don't be the bottleneck. Don't be the one that holds everything up. Find a way to communicate the point, to reach the people that you need to reach in order to have an effective strategy that helps the organization, that helps the people along the way.
And also a learning environment. Seek and create professional and personal learning pathways. Lifelong learners become the future as they bring light and somatic game-changing opportunity.
And then proficiency and efficiency over ego. It's not always about whose idea it was. Like sometimes ego can get attached to that. Get away from that. Get to what is the most important thing and what do we need to happen. The good things are going to come around that.
Yeah.
But then you have holistic health and fitness. So you have to get to a point where you're practicing good health and fitness, diet, nutrition, physical fitness, your own mental fitness, working on your mental readiness, your mental toughness as well. And then work ethic and talent. A lot of people think that talent is the thing that carries you through. But I would tell you that work ethic from experience is going to outpace talent every single time. And the last point is to be the difference. So don't be the one that's succumbed by the situation, by the organization, but be the difference. Be the one who has a voice that's a little bit different than everyone else's voice. And that means that you have to be unique. That means you have to know who you are. That means you have to do the work with emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And ask yourself, how can I impact change wherever I am? Like, how can I be the change wherever I am?
And so that's our time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for being with us.
I know that there's like a lot of stereotypes around seeking professional help.
Right.
Is that due to like childhood trauma or generational cycles, or is that like the environment that you're surrounded, the community?
So there's a lot of different reasons why, variations of why people don't want to do it. Family system is huge. Family systems, a lot of times they grow up in family systems that teach them you have to be quiet. Everything that happens in the home and stays in the home. And that is so unhealthy. So we have to challenge the family system. Also, it could be trauma. People are embarrassed by their trauma. They're like, oh my gosh, you don't want to hear what I've been through. And I'm like, I've heard it all. There's nothing that's going to surprise me. So just share. And the more you share, the more free you become. Because when you're trapped in that trauma and those cycles, you just feel you can't be your full self. You can't express yourself fully. So well, there's so many different reasons, but ultimately family systems and the fear of talking about what you've been through.
Anything else? I have a question. In the beginning, Professor White, you mentioned that only 7% experienced trauma? Or
Se-
did you say
70%.
70%. But according to your theory, I think everyone, like 100% of the people,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, suffered from trauma.
I agree, and I think because a lot of people don't even report the trauma because of
Yes.
fear
Yes.
of how people may perceive them. People want to be perceived as I'm
Yeah.
strong, there's nothing that has happened. But I'm telling you, the strongest thing you can do is talk about what you've been through, because you can set other people free.
But that 70% included what grief, trauma,
Yes.
those you mentioned.
Yes.
And then the rest of 30% are like younger people who didn't experience much.
So unreported. So everyone
Unreported.
everyone doesn't report, you know, hey, you know, I've been through a few things, or I'm seeking mental health support for these things.
Right.
It's not largely reported, you know, all the time. So that's a challenge. Is sometimes people just don't want to talk about it. They just want to keep it to themselves.
Right.
But the interesting point is that out of the 70% that do report, 1 out of 5 of them have said, hey, I've experienced more than one traumatic event. And I can guarantee you that I'm probably looking at some people in here that have experienced traumatic events. And what I would say is, no matter what your trauma is, nobody's pain is bigger than someone else's pain. Like, it's all about, okay, how do you work through the healing? How do you work through the process to get yourself back together so you can form that foundation and then become resilient on top of that?
Right.
Because you're going to go through more things in life. It's not going to be the end of the road. That's what the data tells us.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm sure you have more questions, but we have networking
Okay,
session
okay.
later.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
So